So my name's Jack Whittaker. I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Surrey. I also help to run an initiative called petscams.com with some really excellent volunteers, which I can talk about, some other time. This is a small study that was done with ScamAdviser, where we attempted to look at, why consumers get scammed or not. One thing that we're really missing is good research into victimization and what can actually stop people from being victimized in online fraud. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce this a bit here. So effectively, we surveyed 4,300 consumers with ScamAdviser. We found that 60% were males that responded, and also that the geographical location of the respondents, primarily English-speaking countries, but also countries such as India, Nigeria was quite big as well, Pakistan, Italy, France, Germany, and Poland as well. So this is just a breakdown of who we surveyed and why we surveyed them. So firstly, from this survey pool, who was exposed to a scam in the last year? Well, 82% of our respondents were involved in a scam. So that's really good. They think, well, I should say they think they were. So that's quite an important thing to make. And what's also important is only 12% of those that we surveyed have not been approached by a scammer. So what types of scam we're looking at next? So attempts to gain access to your personal information, phishing. This broadly aligns with what some of the other speakers were saying, which is that phishing is by and large the largest type of scam. So that correlates to our study and what we found. Also, what was really interesting is 419 scams, unexpected money, still a very high quantity scam. And also cryptocurrency investments. We've seen the rise of Bitcoin, etc., and other cryptocurrencies. So that was really interesting to see that these scams are also increasing. And then flagging behind, we had product scams, non-delivery fraud, counterfeiting. But they weren't too far behind, so they're still very worthwhile noting. And in minority, we had dating and romance and fake charities. So what was really interesting about this is I wanted to look at next, what were the consequences of the scam? Was it just money that was lost in a scam, or was there more? So primarily it was monetary losses, but also we had things like theft of data, also blackmail and extortion, and also 3% admitted to taking part in an illegal activity. I was really interested to see whether any money mules would own up to being, recruited as a money mule as part of the scam. So that was really interesting to see that. Next, we look at the amounts lost. What was really interesting about this is it was quite a large amount, the average loss among our 4,300 respondents. $11,000 was the average amount lost, with the median being 400. Next, we're looking at the confidence. Even though we had 67% who were exposed to a scam and fell for it, what was really interesting was 71% of the respondents in this survey said that they were confident identifying a scam. So the natural question is, why is that the case? And that's what we're going to look at next. So this is where things start to get quite interesting now. I was very interested to see what types of techniques people were using in the response to determine whether something was a scam or not. What was fairly shocking is that people were often using outdated or perhaps even irrelevant advice or unhelpful advice to identify whether something is a scam. So what was really concerning was checking for an SSL certificate was 19%. For those of you that don't know, the SSL certificate is the little padlock in the corner. And actually, if you're dealing with a fake e-commerce website, for instance, most websites these days actually come with an SSL certificate. So really this advice is outdated. And also I noticed some other things like asking friends and family, checking the website if there is a phone number at all, and also checking for reviews on other websites, which I was quite concerned about because we're seeing, a huge rise in scammers who are actually flooding review sites now with fake reviews. So really, really interesting stuff, actually. So what we wanted to look at next is, if you didn't report a scam, why wouldn't you report a scam? And really, there are two answers that came from this. Reporting it is far too complicated, and they don't know who to report to. As an academic, this is something we see a lot of, which is so-called the merry-go-round effect, whereby nobody quite knows who to report a scam to. Should you report to consumer protection? Should you report to local police, national police, voluntary organizations? So it really is very confusing for victims of cybercrime and online fraud. Lastly, this was really interesting, which is how would you rate your law enforcement efforts at fighting online fraud? 65% rate their efforts as either poor or very poor. I think this is really concerning. It's also not something new at all. Within the past 20 years, one thing that as academics we've learned is that fraud has never actually been a priority crime for law enforcement. That has to really change, if I'm honest with you. 97% of fraud in the UK, as some takeaway points, 97% of fraud in the UK is never investigated, which is really scary. Fraud, as I've said, fraud is not a priority crime. Fraud is also highly underreported. Not only is the complexity of fraud itself, but also victims feel ashamed of reporting fraud, etc. And then, just some quotes to finish that off with, why should I bother? Nothing will happen with my reports. What's the point? I didn't lose much money. If you're a scammer and you can defraud a lot of people for not so much money, a couple $100, for instance, then, the chances are they're not going to get looked into due to the high policing thresholds. And the final one, oh, the bank refunded me. What's the point? And then just to cap this off, someone once said to me in policing, if it's not shouting, bleeding or banging, then it won't get prioritized. And really that, is quite a pessimistic view, but that's the current state of things. I do have a much longer presentation of this, so please feel free. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions. Thank you for the invite to speak.
Thank you very much, Jack. I'm very happy that we could do this research together, and thank you for doing actually all the hard work with all the analysis and statistical work you did.